Here's something that'll stop you in your tracks. Right now, at this exact moment, your body is making a decision about whether you're under attack. Not from a person or a predator, but from an email, a deadline, a text message. And it's flooding your bloodstream with the same chemicals your ancestors used to outrun saber-toothed tigers. Except you're sitting at a desk and there's nowhere to run. Nearly half of American workers report experiencing stress every single day. Not occasionally, not when things get tough, every single day. And here's what nobody tells you. The techniques most people use to manage stress, they're actually making it worse. But before we get to what actually works, and trust me, the science here is going to surprise you, we need to talk about what's really happening inside your body when stress takes over. Your brain can't tell the difference between a genuine threat and a notification. That's not an exaggeration. When your phone buzzes, when your boss sends that vaguely worded message, when you remember that thing you forgot to do, your amygdala, the ancient fear processing center of your brain, lights up the same way it would if you encountered a bear. The signal travels to your hypothalamus, which acts like a command center, activating what researchers call the HPA axis, your body's stress response system. Within seconds, your adrenal glands, sitting on top of your kidneys, start pumping out cortisol. Your heart rate spikes, your blood pressure climbs, your muscles tense, glucose floods your bloodstream. All of this made perfect sense when danger meant something with teeth. The problem? That same response system, unchanged for thousands of years, is now triggering 50, 60, maybe 100 times a day. And unlike our ancestors who could either fight the threat or escape it, releasing all that built-up energy, we just sit there. We stew in it. The chemicals meant to save your life start slowly destroying it instead. But here's where it gets interesting and where most stress advice completely misses the point. Everyone tells you to just relax, take a bubble bath, do some deep breathing. And sure, those things can help in the moment, but here's what a recent study found that changes everything. Over 80% of employees are at risk of burnout in 2025, and the reason isn't that they're not trying hard enough to relax, it's that they're approaching stress backward. Think about it. When you feel overwhelmed, what do? Most people try to control their stress response, force themselves to calm down, push through, or distract themselves. But neuroscience research shows something fascinating. The most effective stress reduction doesn't come from controlling the response. It comes from changing what triggers it in the first place. There's a researcher named Gabrielle Oettingen at NYU who studied this. She found that positive thinking, just imagining everything working out perfectly, actually makes stress worse. Why? Because your brain knows you're lying to it. You're telling yourself everything's fine while your body is screaming that it's not. The disconnect creates more stress, not less. So what works? She developed something called mental contrasting. You acknowledge what you want, you visualize it happening, then, and this is crucial, you identified the specific obstacle standing in your way and make a concrete plan for overcoming it. Healthcare workers who use this technique showed significantly more engagement and measurably lower stress than those who didn't. It's not about pretending the stress doesn't exist. It's about giving your brain a clear path through it. Now let's talk about something most people get completely wrong. Exercise. Yes, you've heard a million times that exercise reduces stress. But do you know why? Because the reason matters more than you think. When you exercise, your muscles produce enzymes that literally detoxify chiruninine, a byproduct of stress and inflammation that accumulates in your bloodstream. You're not just burning off steam, you're chemically neutralizing the toxic effects of stress at a molecular level. Recent studies found that people who commute by bike display far lower stress levels in the first 45 minutes of work than those who drive or take public transit. And those early morning stress levels, they set the tone for your entire day. But here's the part nobody mentions. The exercise doesn't have to be intense. In fact, intense exercise can sometimes trigger more cortisol release if you're already maxed out. What matters is consistent, moderate movement that gives your body permission to complete the stress cycle it keeps starting but never finishing. You know what else does this? Something so simple you'll probably dismiss it. Washing dishes. No, seriously, a Florida State University study found that people who wash dishes mindfully, paying attention to the warmth of the water, the texture of the soap, the circular motion of their hands, experienced measurable reductions in stress and increased mental clarity. The repetitive motion, the focused attention, the completion of a small task, your nervous system reads this as resolution, safety. The thing you were preparing for, it's handled. Now here's something that might make you uncomfortable. The biggest source of your stress might not be your job, your finances, or your relationships. It might be your phone. Researchers at the University of British Columbia ran an experiment. They asked people to either check their email constantly throughout the day or limit themselves to just 3 times daily. The people who limited their checking significantly less stressed. Not slightly, significantly. And this was just email. Now add texts, social media, news alerts, and everything else demanding your attention. Every notification is a tiny stress response. Every scroll through bad news is your brain registering threat. Every comparison on social media is your amygdala deciding you're not safe, not successful, not enough. And it's all happening below your conscious awareness hundreds of times a day, creating what researchers call chronic allostatic overload. Your body's stuck in emergency mode with no emergency to resolve. The fix isn't what you think. It's not about disconnecting completely or throwing your phone in a river. It's about what psychologists call cognitive reframing, teaching your brain to evaluate whether something actually requires a stress response. Here's a technique. When you feel that spike of anxiety from a notification or message, pause and ask yourself, what's the probability this actually matters in a way that requires my immediate attention? If something has a genuine 1 in 10 chance of being critical, should it occupy 90% of your mental energy? Your brain needs you to do this math for it, because left to its own devices, it treats everything like a 10 out of 10 emergency. Now we're getting to something powerful, something that shows up in study after study, but sounds almost too simple to work. Connection. Not networking, not socializing, connection. There's a difference. In 2024, researchers found that 43% of adults reported feeling more anxious than the previous year, with stress identified as the primary driver. But here's what they also found. People with strong, authentic relationships showed dramatically different physiological responses to the same stressors. When you feel genuinely connected to someone, when you're talking with a person you trust about something real, your body releases oxytocin. This hormone doesn't just make you feel good, it actively counteracts cortisol. It lowers your blood pressure, it reduces your heart rate. It signals to your nervous system that despite everything else going on, you're not alone, which means you're not in danger. Compare this to surface-level interactions or worse, isolation. Loneliness triggers the same biological stress response as physical pain. Your immune system interprets it as a threat. And in our hyper-connected but deeply disconnected world, millions of people are walking around in a chronic state of biological alarm, not because anything's actually wrong, but because they lack genuine human connection. This is why therapy works for stress even when you're not discussing trauma or mental illness. The act of being heard, of feeling understood, of having another human being fully present with you. Your body reads this as, I'm safe enough to stop preparing for danger. Now let's talk about something happening in your gut right now that's either helping you handle stress or making it 10 times worse. Your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive system, is constantly communicating with your brain through what scientists call the gut-brain axis.
Recent research found that people who consume foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids like fish, flaxseed, and chia seeds show reduced inflammation and greater resilience to stress. But it goes deeper than that. Studies on blueberries found they help counter the effects of post-traumatic stress in animal models. Walnuts appear to prepare the body for stress by reducing blood pressure responses before stressful events even happen. This isn't about eating clean or following some restrictive diet. It's about understanding that your gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters, the same chemicals that regulate mood and stress response. When you feed them inflammatory foods, they send inflammatory signals to your brain. When you feed them what they need to thrive, they help regulate your stress response from the inside out. Even something as simple as green tea changes the game. Research found that green